I want less. I want less stuff. I want less junk. I want smaller houses. I want fewer cars. I just want less so I can focus really heavy on the things that actually are important to me, not cleaning, 6 bathrooms of a house that'll be at 10% of my time. Kip, what's up, brother? So great to see you. It sounds like do you have the whole week off? Are you going to take the whole week off?
I'm going to take the whole week off. If you count me going to another house and working on it as taking off. But yes, I am not doing my day job.
I'll take it off from work, right? From paid work. You're still going to work. It's just not paid anymore.
Yeah, free labor until Thursday.
You're paying to work.
Totally.
Oh, man. Yeah. I've never built a house, but I can imagine the physical and mental anguish that comes with that has got to be exhausting and overwhelming.
Well, and you start putting weight on things. Like, it sounds like a great idea to have, let me think through this really quick. 1, 2. It sounds like a great idea to have 6 bathrooms in a house. Until.
Is that how many are in the place?
Yes. Until you have 6 bathrooms. And then you're like, oh my gosh, like buying 6 toilets. And I got vanities to do this weekend. I mean, I don't know. You're like, we don't need 6 toilets. 1 toilet makes a lot of sense, right? Like, no one's shitting all at the same time. I don't know what the big deal is.
Well, they will now because they can.
Totally.
I was thinking about that over the weekend because I actually rent a place right now. I own a couple of different places, and when I moved back to Utah, I was thinking about moving into one of those homes, but the rent's so good. I've got tenants that have been there forever. They're great tenants. I'm like, why would I cut off that income stream? Somebody else pay my mortgage off. And I found a really nice place to rent, and utilities are included. Internet's included. Like, it's the yard maintenance is included. If something goes out, like the heater a couple of months ago went out, I called the guy up. I'm like, hey, the heater's out. And he's like, cool, I'll send somebody over. Somebody else came over. I didn't have to deal with any of that. And my oldest son this weekend was asking, he said, Dad, are you still looking for places? I'm like, no, I'm not. He's like, why? And I said, it's nice to own your own home, but it just comes with extra stuff. And I'm just not interested. And then you've got my daughter who's like, Dad, let's get a dog and let's do this and do that. I'm like, I don't really want to do any of that. I'm in the opposite direction, Kip, as you, and I think maybe you're coming to the same realization here. I want less. I want less stuff. I want less junk. I want smaller houses. I want fewer cars. I just want less so I can focus really heavy on the things that actually are important to me, not cleaning, 6 bathrooms of a house that'll be at 10% of my time.
It sounds like a complete old man thing to say, right? Like, look at you.
Oh,
look
for
what
sure,
you just described. You're pretty much going into retirement.
Absolutely. I'm proud of it. But you know what? Don't for a second think, Kip, that I'm not going to come up and partake of your 6 bathrooms.
Oh, I'm sure.
I'll find yours. I'll find your bathroom and leave a little surprise, little present in there for you.
Yeah, let's clarify simplicity on what you deal with, complexity and taking advantage of others. Yeah.
It's like owning a boat. You don't want to own a boat. You want friends who own boats.
Yeah. Well played.
Do you have
sir.
a boat, Kip?
Well played. I do.
Okay.
You're coming up for sure.
I know it's on the way. So.
Yeah. I couldn't get you to come up to Delta for a while, but now you're like, wait, 6 bathrooms, boat? Oh, yeah, dude, pals.
I'm in. Do the toilet seats, are they heated? That's the question. If they are, I'm a little bougie when it comes to that.
Yeah, so. They're not heated, but they are elevated costs, so they sit higher, so they're they're a little bit more expensive. So you don't have to bend over as far. Yeah.
Well, I don't know, squatty potty or anything. I mean, you might need one of those.
I'll throw a squatty potty in there for you.
There you go. All right, this conversation went downhill fast.
First world problems, by the way. Every guy's listening is like, dude, I'm dealing with some real crap, and these guys are complaining about, second homes and everything. So, hey, we get it. We've been there too.
I'm not complaining. I'm really happy you have a second home. I love it.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, actually, that's a good point. Look, we don't need to compare woes, but also, take your situation. You've got this home you're building. You're in the financial position to do it. And I think a lot of men will naturally just discount it like, oh, wouldn't it be nice? Or, man, I wish I could do that. Well, you can. And to your credit, Kip, you've built a life over decades of being in the position where you can have 6 bathrooms in a place and you can take some time off of work to go build the place. And like you've built that. So
the price was paid.
Right. And it will continue to be paid. Yeah. So I get really frustrated sometimes when I hear guys who complain about other people being successful, because what it ends up doing is it discounts their ability to be successful. Right? Because, oh, if it was just luck, or I wish I could have it, or oh, this guy's an idiot, he just took advantage of people. These are all things you hear regularly. Then the ball's out of your court and there's nothing you can do about it in your own life. So the lesson here is not, oh, Kip's an asshole because he's got another home and he's complaining about 6 bathrooms. The lesson is, what in the world is Kip doing that he's got a place where he can have these bathrooms and have the lake and have the boat and go on the vacation for the week? That's what we should be focused on in the message. So I think it's important we throw that out there.
Yeah, agreed. That way I don't get harassed by a bunch of people. So thanks for
keep harassing them. No, still harass them. Yeah, no, keep doing that. But just in your own life, think about how it can apply positively.
Check. All right, headlines,
All right,
sir.
let's get to headlines. I think you're leading us off today.
I'm leading us off. So I heard something over last week, got me all riled up. And then this morning, as I was going over the details of it, because I don't want to just have a strong opinion off of a headline, I read the details, and what to come to find out that the headline that got me so riled up is not 100% completely accurate. And thus, that's kind of my takeaway. That like, man, got to be slow to jump to conclusions. There's always a little bit more detail to things, and we got to think critically. The headline, just so everyone can relate to it, was really around Hawaii, right? So Hawaii court says the spirit of aloha supersedes the Constitution and the Second Amendment. Now, at first glance, when you hear that, what do you assume?
Yeah, I mean, it's you don't. Nobody likes that. A red-blooded American doesn't like that for sure.
Yeah, that is. They got rid of the Second Amendment in Hawaii. That's what you would assume. That absolutely Second Amendment is demolished in Hawaii. And I was like, no way. As I jump into it, they're really talking about state laws around, constitutional carry versus licenses and carrying in public, and kind of some of the details that a lot of states are already have differences around already. Now, we could talk about the pros and cons of constitutional carry, or whether states or should not. But regardless, I think my key takeaway was man, a little bit slow to anger. Look at the details, critically think. It's not as clickbaitish or black and white as Fox or CNN or any other news outlet would want media to believe and get me all pissed off and ready to share and, spit anger. And that was kind of my takeaway is man, a little bit slower to place some judgment and do some critical thinking.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I can't tell you how many times I've put my foot in my mouth because I've made a whole post on Instagram about some title, and then the guy's like, "Did you read it?" I'm like, well, maybe I should do that, and I go read it. I'm like, "Ooh, take that one back." Messed up on that one. Totally. There was this article, or not even an article, just a story, a news story, not too long ago of this transgender person who got in a fight and ended up going to the hospital, and she died. And that was the headline. Transgender girl or boy or whatever, I don't really know all the details, ends up dying after getting bullied in the bathroom at the school. So that was what everybody ran with, and that's what people see. Well, come to find out, it was this transgender person started the fight, was actually suicidal, and ended up dying not because of the fight. She was actually fine after the fight. She went to the hospital because she overdosed on pills and she died. So is manipulated to fit this narrative. And we don't need to necessarily talk about it right now, what the narrative is. The point is, we're being lied to all the time, either through omission or downright lying and deceit. Totally. So we got to be, to your point, very, very careful of adopting a headline and assuming that this is the entire story. It's very rarely is it.
Totally. When we lived in New York, I lived in the financial district of New York, and I can't remember, it was a friend or a family member reached out and says, "Oh, I cannot believe about that whole synagogue thing." And I'm not sure if you remember this, but it was this Muslim church opens a synagogue across the street from the 9/11 memorial, right? And you're like,
I remember that.
No way, right? And I remember thinking like, that's insane. And so I went out of my way one day and thought, hey, where's this synagogue? I'm going to go look at it.
Let's go look. Yeah.
It's like 4 blocks away, and it's a prayer room in a recreational like community center.
It's crazy, man.
Right? And I was like, freaking news, marketing. Like,
I know. Don't trust anything.
Don't trust anything. People, like, to your point, we're being lied to so often, and it's ridiculous. And man, it's so unacceptable. It's half truths, it's spun truths, and I don't know. It just gets me so frustrated that we buy into it too, and that we're pawns of it. So many people in society in general. It's really unfortunate.
Oh, I mean, us too, right? You and I too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tempting because it's lazy, right? Because it requires me to look up a bunch of stuff, and and it fits my narrative, right? I already have a strong opinion, so when I see some stupid state going against the Second Amendment, I want to just get riled up and say, see, validation, and not necessarily true, or a little bit more complex than that.
Yeah. Well, and I'm learning to, just like you said, just be a little bit more critical, but also staying in my own lane. Now, I normally wouldn't subscribe to that, so let me give you some context. When I say stay in your lane, any lane can be yours. Like that's the beauty of living in this country in the most free and prosperous time we ever have. You can pick a lane, you can decide that lane's yours, and tomorrow you can pick a new lane and decide that one's yours. What I'm saying about staying in your lane, and I'm not great at this, but I am learning, is that unless you're going to actually do some research and dive into it, best probably just to keep your mouth shut.
Yeah.
That's what I mean about staying in your lane, because I've done it so often where I'll blurt something based on some misinformation that I got from some news outlet or some podcast or whatever, and I did no research on it, and then I ended up sticking my foot in my mouth and creating more problems than good. So if you are going to do that, I would suggest that you spend a little time researching it. If you're not, then maybe talk about something else.
Yeah. You want to see a great example of this? Jocko was on with Piers Morgan. Watch that interview. Piers Morgan asked him some key questions, and I remember pausing going, how will Jocko answer this? And he so eloquently responded with things like, I'm not close enough to it to have all the necessary details to have a strong opinion. This is what I see.
Right.
Very well played on his part and very mature. It's a great example of that.
Yeah.
Really great example of that.
Well,
yeah, what's your headline,
so
man?
on that news, well, I'm going to stick my foot in my mouth, I'm sure. So let's just go ahead and do that and get that out of the way.
Maybe I should have gone second.
Yeah. I was listening to something the other day, and I pulled up. I've got a couple of resources here, so I'm actually looking at it right here in front of me. But Scotland just updated hate crime. There are some hate crime laws. I believe that they already had these laws in place, but the thing that really stood out to me was this new element of these hate crime. They call it the Hate Crime and Public Order Act, but it says here, quote, they're creating a new offense of, and I'm quoting here now, threatening or abusive behavior which is intended to stir up hatred on the grounds of age, disability, religion, sexual orientation, transgender identity, and variations of sex characteristics. I think this is a huge issue. I think once you start, and I will say this with a bit of a disclaimer, I don't know Scotland's and the UK's rules about freedom of speech and all of that. So we have to remember this is a different country than the US.
Yeah.
But it's also important to recognize what's happening throughout the world, because I think this is trending and you're going to see more and more of this. In fact, I have an example of things like this happening in the US. So look, if you're deliberately and intentionally stirring up violence towards another person, that's illegal here in the United States. But if you have an opinion that isn't popular, or you hate a subgroup of people, or whatever it may be, I believe you should have the right to say it. We need to be able to have these conversations. And rather than litigating and creating laws that limit free speech, we ought to combat free speech with speech, where we actually talk about these ideas and talk about why those aren't good ideas. But the minute you start manipulating, coercing, strong-arming people into what they can say and think is the minute we have a huge, huge problem. So I've got another example here, and this one is from the U.S. This is Governor Abbott in Texas. This, to me, is crazy, and there's going to be a lot of conservative people who probably don't agree with me on this, but I'm going to quote here. Let's see. This is an executive order from Governor Abbott regarding all higher education institutions in Texas review their free speech policies to establish appropriate punishments for anti-Semitic rhetoric on college and university campuses. That is out of line. Yep. Now, look, I don't agree with anti-Semitic thoughts and rhetoric. I don't think it's healthy. I don't think it's conducive. I don't even think it's a good thing at all, of course. But again, you have a governor who's coming in and telling people they can't think or speak freely. I think they should be able to. I don't agree with what they're saying, this anti-Semitic rhetoric, but unless they're calling for violence or action against a certain group of people, then I believe we have every right to say what we want to say. And again, the minute, and look, I'm only sharing that, part of the reason I'm sharing this is because it's on both sides of the aisle. It's not just conservatism. It's not just liberalism. It's on both sides of the aisle. And in fact, in this case, this is more of a conservative principle, but the fact that he's taking this executive order and saying that all of these policies need to be reviewed and establish appropriate punishments for anti-Semitic rhetoric. Let me say that another way. Punish people for words they don't like or agree with. That is a dangerous, dangerous precedent and goes exactly against the founding principles of this country. So we need to fight against this. And it doesn't really matter the issue. Look, I don't agree with white supremacism. I don't agree with anti-Semitic rhetoric. I don't agree with a lot of these things. Racism against black people. But the principle is those individuals have a right through our Constitution to say that, and then we should combat that with speech, not laws. Because it's I know there's what do they call it? A fallacy, logical fallacy of slippery slope. This is not a slippery slope. We know where this goes because we see it. So yeah. It's dangerous. We need to be aware of it. And that was my headline today.
I love it. I can't help but see the correlation with social media, censoring information. And it's funny when you think about social media, censoring information. We were young enough to be, we're the generation that grew up without the internet, and then we got it, right? So we're kind of this unique generation that the younger kids they don't know when it started, and we kind of lived on the cusp of that transition. But it's funny how often, I remember this when I was younger, that stupidity and they wouldn't use the word stupidity, but like, the thing that needed to be fixed in the world is educating people, making information available. And through that process, we'd, help the poor and everything. It's about access to information. Well, guess what? Everyone has information now. And did that help? And it's funny. And now that there's this trend of, well, we need to remove the information now. If they happen to see something, they can't think for themselves. So we gotta vet things because they're too stupid, and if they see that information, we gotta control them. The spirit of reducing and controlling information is in the spirit of not believing in humans. It is in the spirit of thinking they are less than, and whoever's in control is greater than and knows better than. That is a form of disempowerment. Unacceptable. We need to believe in the human condition. We need to believe in humans that they're fully capable, because it's through that process that they'll learn and grow. You don't control people. Very, very dangerous precedents to get started.
Yeah, and look, to your point, I only believe there's really only two types of people in this world, and it's those who believe in the power of individuals and humans, and those who don't.
Yeah.
And most of our politicians are in the latter.
Yeah,
both
they
sides of
don't
the aisle,
believe.
by the way.
Yeah.
I need to rescue them because they can't do it for themselves. They don't believe in the power of the
believe in
human
you.
spirit. Yeah. No, they don't. They don't believe in you as an individual, and they think they know better than you. And that's both sides of the aisle. And
Yeah.
you know, unfortunately, there are some situations where people don't know any better and they don't have the education. They don't have the resources. That's real. We need to get those people the information, education, and resources. But for the most part, and 100% of the part, I think, in this country. Now, look, depending on your immutable characteristics, depending on your background and history and parents and all these sorts of things, that may be harder for some people than others, but the opportunities are there. And the human spirit is pretty incredible when it's unleashed, not restrained.
Totally.
All right, let's go to questions.
Yeah, so we have a handful of questions from Instagram. I kind of wanted to cover those, and then we'll jump over to the Foundry from the Iron Council. So first question, Garrett MCD. Cool. And I love this, and of course you could see why I love this question, because there's some meat in this. In a relationship, dating for about a year with many small issues that never seem to get resolved, regardless of effort and conversation. When is it fair to decide enough is enough?
You know what I would suggest? I'd suggest you get married as soon as possible and start having babies together.
And then she'll change. Then she'll change.
Come on. Come on now. Many small issues. Look, benefit of the doubt. Or let's look at this a different way. Like, have you really tried everything? Because sometimes we'll say, oh, we've tried everything and they don't get resolved. And then you start to dig a little deeper and you really haven't tried everything. But if you're a year into a relationship and there's many small problems that don't ever get resolved, this is not going to work. I don't see a universe in which this relationship works for the long haul. What I see happening, if I can predict the future here a little bit, is you overlooking all those red flags, you deciding that you're going to marry her, not because you necessarily think she's the one, but because you don't think you can do any better and you have no self-respect. And then you're going to start popping out kids, and then you're going to have a separation and or a divorce, and you're going to have to abandon those two kids to some degree because you guys are no longer together. That is the route. That's the road you're on right now. That's the answer. Look, if you can't, dating is to figure out if this is somebody I can be with long term. And if you're having many small issues, trust me, this is going to sound bad. She doesn't get better. You guys are in the honeymoon phase of your relationship. This is like the best time. Both of you are on your best behavior. Wait till you guys are on your worst behavior after 3 years of marriage. And I don't know. What do you think? You agree or disagree, Kip?
Absolutely agree. I knew all you would get fired up on that question. That's why I wanted to include it. You don't change people. So if all those small issues aren't things that you could you totally are in love with her and it's not a big deal and you're good rolling forward and you don't need her to change, then awesome. Sounds like a great relationship. But man, if you're holding on to stuff and you're like, yeah, I got to deal with this or we got to resolve, dude, probability is they're not changing, they're not going away, and they're only getting amplified with more stress of life, such as children and debt and other things that might show up. If you can't do it when it's easy, it's not going to get any easier when it's hard.
Yeah. I hate to say that because I believe in relationships and I believe in marriage and the power of long-term committed relationships. So I hate to say that, but I think that's the reality.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't go into it hoping and waiting that things are going to get better. That's not the right mentality. All right. DM Creary 97. He wants to know your full hunting setup and lessons learned while starting your journey, your hunting journey, your full setup.
My full setup? I mean, if I'm rifle hunting, it's typically my Ruger American 308. And I use Origin camo I don't. I have a Vortex rangefinder and binos.
How about your bow?
I don't know. My bow. Yeah, that's probably more. That's probably more accurate on his setup. I have a Hoyt, and I got what I have is not like I'm not
arrows.
Like a guy. I'm not a gear person. That's the hard part. Is I'm not a gear guy.
Yeah,
like,
this guy's
I go as
expected
minimum
like
as I.
yeah. Sorry.
I mean, I use the Hoyt RX3. I think is what I have, or one. I can't remember. It's black. It shoots arrows. I have a Spot Hog. I'm not trying to be dismissive of the question. I don't like the details are not good for me. Like I don't get into it. But yeah, I use Origin camo. I use the Hoyt RX. I think it's a 1. I have a Spot Hog sight. I use FMJs, Easton FMJs for my arrows. I have a mechanical broadheads, Rage broadheads is what I use. And that's the extent of my 2 setups.
Yeah. I like it.
What was the second part of that question? I just am not like I don't geek out on this. It's not bad. I just don't do it.
Yeah,
what was the second part
your
of the question?
jam? Really just your lessons learned while starting your hunting journey.
Oh yeah. Yeah, like just being around other good people, meeting really cool people, forging deep bonds and connections. One thing it's really helped me with is manage disappointment and expectations. When I started hunting, I had big expectations of like, I'm going to go out into the woods and I'm going to shoot this animal and it's going to die right there. And then I'm going to throw it on my shoulders and carry it back to camp. And all the guys are going to cheer for me and all the women are going to, take their shirts off because of my glorious, return triumphant from my hunt. And it just didn't really work like that, So, I think it was more like you go out there and you're cold and you're bored and you're miserable and you don't see anything. And then when you finally do, you make a bad shot on it because you're all nervous. And then you got to track it for 3 hours. And then maybe you'll find it, maybe you won't. Like it's just, and then you bring it back and nobody cares, So it's just managing the expectation. And so anymore, when I go hunt, it's to enjoy the experience. It's just to be there with good people, to be present, to enjoy the stillness of sitting in a cold stand, or spot and stock, to hopefully bring back an animal to cook and prepare and share with my family and friends. That's all what I want, but I'm okay with that not working out. And then also, you do make bad shots and it is hard in a lot of ways. And so you got to forge through those because there's certain moments that just all come together just right. And that makes it worth it. So those are some of the reasons that I like hunting. Also, I'm maybe just a little bit sick when it comes to that and be willing to put myself through that much discomfort and pain and boredom, but I do enjoy it.
Yeah, I love it. All right, Max Narin, what's the best advice that you can give a man after seeing his ex and having an awkward interaction with her? How does that man deal with the situation?
Let me just make sure I clarify. Awkward conversation with the ex?
Yeah. Seeing the ex and having an awkward interaction.
Yeah, I mean, that's to be expected, right?
Yeah,
I think that's just par for the course. It's you guys had a life together. You shared a lot of experiences together. Maybe she's moved on. Maybe you have. Maybe you saw her with a new guy or she saw you with a new woman. Like, that's going to be awkward and uncomfortable. I think just realize that that's the nature of it. And I'm not too far into my divorce, a couple years almost at this point. But I imagine it'll just get better over time, and there used to be more of a visceral reaction when we'd see each other, and that isn't there. It's more towards indifference now, not totally, but moving that direction. And I think there probably comes a point in time, and Kip, you can maybe speak on this, where it's no longer weird because it was so long ago, a different part of your life. And so it is what it is, and that's it. It just doesn't become awkward. But one thing I would say is don't make it awkward.
Yeah.
Even if you're hurting inside, Maybe you're seeing her with a new guy and you guys are out on dinner and you see her with her new guy and you bump into each other. You don't have to show that just because you're feeling it. And it's probably not appropriate to. So a simple, hey, it's good to see you, even if maybe it's not, or hey, I'm glad you're doing well, even though maybe you're not really feeling that. Or like, hey, like good luck with everything. Like you could make it awkward or not. Even if you're feeling uncomfortable, and I think that's probably the best way to play it, is just play it cool, wish her luck, and happiness, tell her congrats on whatever is going on if life is good for her. It just seems like the better way to do it, especially if there's kids involved.
Yeah.
Because why make it unnecessarily uncomfortable, especially, like I said, if kids are involved?
The one thing that you said that I really appreciate is it's normal. So don't make it wrong that it's hard. Just deal with it, accept it. I remember the first time that I saw my ex and I knew she was with someone. Man, it felt like a knife in my gut. Like it was so hard to deal with. But to your point, indifferent now. It almost feels like it's the story I read. It wasn't even my life, And it's not even a thing.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, I'm a different person. She's a different person. It's almost like some other story or a dream, really. So it takes time. But I think the key thing, don't make it wrong. It makes sense. You loved her probably. It makes sense that it would sting a little bit, that it'd hurt a little bit. You have history together, right? And don't make it awkward. I agree. Because otherwise then she's going to react to you being a punk and it's no good.
What's the point of it? Like what value, what good comes from it?
Yeah.
I would also say just be respectful too, right? Yeah. Like a lot of guys I know will try to get back at her or, rub something in her face. And like, you don't need to do that. Like,
don't be petty.
And that isn't even why you're doing the thing. For example, if you're dating another woman, you don't need to rub that in her face. Is that why you're dating the other woman? To get back at your ex? And in that case, you're not doing justice or fairness to the other woman either.
Yeah.
Right? So don't rub things in her face, even if there's a lot of animosity or she's done it to you. Just be a better man, drive on with your life, and get over it.
Yeah. Killmonger Jitsu, developing patience. What are your methods of becoming more patient with others, with your children, with yourself?
I'm most impatient when I'm stressed with too much on my plate.
Yeah.
And so the best thing I've ever done from a patience perspective is give myself more margin. So for example, if I want to cook dinner for my kids, and we did last night, I have this little Uni. It's called Uni, Ooni. It's a pizza cooker. It's a little personal pizza cooker. Yeah, it's a pain in the ass. But I had plenty of time last night. It took 3 times as long as it should. I burnt the first 2 pizzas. It was a total pain. If I didn't have the time to do that and I was stressed about making a phone call or getting to an appointment or doing something else, that would have gone horribly. But I didn't. I was there and I could do it and I had the time and it was fine. It was fun. Everybody liked their pizza after the first, half a dozen attempts or whatever it was. But for me, it's just stretching out your time a little bit more and not adding so much to your plate because I get stressed and then I get impatient and then I start rushing things and then I make mistakes or I leave a wake of collateral damage with other people. And so margin is the best thing for me.
And we need to get Ryan an easy bake. We need to get you a little easy bake oven so Ryan can cook for the fam.
Yeah, one more thing I get to learn. Can't wait. So excited.
Well, it's easy bake. You don't have to learn anything. It's easy.
Nothing's easy. I mean, that's old. Easy bake oven is old school, but nothing's easy. Everything's way more complicated and complex than it needs to be. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's like just minimize, reduce, get rid of, unclutter, that sort of thing.
Yeah. I totally agree with you on your response to that question. We're not addressing something. And that's the other thing I'd add. Let me add that. One could be margin, too much on your plate. The other thing is you're pissed off. Something's not addressed. Shit's not working. And there is no patience anywhere. It doesn't matter like if I didn't work today if I'm out of integrity, if there's an issue that's not being addressed, I'm not taking action towards it, doesn't matter. I'm going to be a dick to everybody I run into. So get on the path of addressing whatever needs to get addressed. And I don't know about you, but I've had these experiences in my life where some of those big stressors, I avoid them like they're going to go away or something, right? They just like push it off, but it's lingering and it's just eating at you. And the minute we take a little bit of action towards those things, I think we get empowered because we're addressing it. Right. We're taking on the ownership and we're not being a victim of it. So whatever it is, start taking action towards addressing it, whether it's conflict in a relationship with a parent or a boss, the letter that you got from the IRS of how much taxes you owe, meet with the CPA, start dealing with it. It is personal. But it's like, I can ignore that letter, right? And that balance, or I can go, you know what? Set up that appointment with the CPA, start filing, start taking care of it. Otherwise, it's not going to get, it's not, you're just perpetuating the thing that's creating the upset. So tackle those upsets.
Yeah, I think there's an element of procrastination there too, right? Like last week on Friday, I was supposed to record an intro and outro for a podcast that's going to be released. The one that was released yesterday with Joshua Broom as of the release of this podcast. Well, I was supposed to do one on Friday. I'm like, nah, I can do it on Saturday, which I know I'm not going to do it on Saturday because I'm checked out. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do it. Well, I'll do it Sunday. No.
Yeah.
Monday rolls around. I have to get it done this morning. And I've got like 15 minutes before you and I are to jump on a call. So when you said, hey, 1 minute, I'm like, oh, sweet, perfect. Give me a little bit of breather here. But yeah, I just procrastinated, and but also to your point, I know that my evening is going to go a whole lot better, just me personally, the relationships I have, if I kick ass during the day.
Yeah.
I've got my to-do list. I've got it all marked out. I got up, went to the gym. I start cranking this out. I don't even have to get it finished, but I know I've been productive and I know everything's either done or accounted for. Then I can let down a little bit. I can breathe a sigh of relief. I can spend time with my kids or my girlfriend and her daughter. Like I can do those things and be fully present because I know I got everything else done that I had to throughout the day. It's when I don't and I slack and I dink off and I dink around that I get frustrated at night or, or I lose my patience with my kids. It's because I didn't do what I needed to do throughout the day. And that's to your point.
Totally. So you had a couple questions on the gram around recovery, right? How's it going? How many days? Maybe just an update.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's going well. August 1st. Yeah. August 1st of, it wasn't not last year. See, like this is what I'm talking about. It's so amazing how incredible humans are. Cause I vividly remember this and struggle with. So it wasn't last year. It was the year before that. So what's that? A year and a half at this point? Yeah. I don't know how many days that is. I don't really track at this point.
Yeah.
Cause it is what it is. But I did track for 90 days and I had a calendar. I printed out 3 months of calendars and I would literally put an X on each one of those for 90 days. And I don't do that now, but a year and a half, things are good. Energy levels are high. Enthusiasm for the work we're doing here, reconnecting with my kids, of course, the connection with my girlfriend. There's so many positives. I won't say I don't have down days or hard days that I would like to drink, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I don't even drink, and I feel like
where it's yeah.
I don't even drink, and some days I'm like, shit, maybe I should start.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just sit in it a little bit. And just realize it's part of the growth and it'll pass too. Yesterday wasn't an awesome day. I made a post in the Iron Council about some things I'm personally dealing with. It wasn't awesome, but I went to bed on time. I woke up early. I got my stuff done and I feel better today. So I'm realizing that there's better ways to, I don't want to say cope because cope makes it sound like you're just pushing it aside, but manage and deal with hard days and hard times.
Yeah. All right. We're going to jump over to the Iron Council questions. So James Gifford, what would you say to a man who hasn't settled on rock bottom yet, merely skipped off, but has continued practicing the behavior and mindsets that got him there in the first place?
Well, as the adage goes, the way to climb out of the hole is to first stop digging. So you say you haven't reached rock bottom yet, but rock bottom is just arbitrary. Unless you're dead, it's just arbitrary. What's my rock bottom is different, Kip, than your rock bottom. So it's all subjective. And the reason I bring that up is because you're saying you're not at rock bottom, but what if you decided you were?
Then you are.
What if today you decided to stop digging? Then you're at the bottom of the hole because it's only uphill from here. Yeah. What you're doing is you're giving yourself permission to slip further. Well, you know, my wife hasn't left me yet, but we're on the rocks. My boss hasn't fired me yet, but he's disappointed in my performance. My kids and I are still on speaking terms, but it really isn't going all that well. Well, like, what's the bottom for you?
Yeah.
And what are you going to decide is the bottom so that you can stop doing the things that you need to stop doing? Now, there's a separate conversation. How do you stop doing those things and start doing the right things? I think a lot of it comes down to education and information. Yeah. I think a lot of it comes down to having the proper systems in place to ensure that you are on the right track. I believe there's a powerful element of accountability with yourself and with other men. And I believe there's hobbies, activities, friendships, things that you can do, experiences that can replace poor habits. So mindset, accountability, systems, brotherhood, hobbies, replacements. These are all powerful things. A couple of great books, Atomic Habits by James Clear and The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. I'd recommend both of those books. But I think the bigger issue here is you're giving yourself a little bit more rope to hang yourself with. Why are you doing that? Stop doing that. Decide that wherever you are right now, this is the bottom. Today's the bottom. This is the worst it's going to get because I'm going to do something different now.
Yeah, totally. And James's question's kind of rooted in how do you bring that up to someone that hasn't stopped
it's not
digging.
him, it's somebody else?
It's not James.
I misunderstood.
Yeah. How does he have this conversation with someone?
Okay, yeah. No, I'm sorry. I misunderstood. I think in that case, you might underscore how much worse it could get.
Probable future.
If they don't stop their behavior. Yeah. And look, ultimately, just like I told you, James, when I misunderstood your question, that person, whoever you're talking about, they need to decide when they hit rock bottom. You can't decide that for them. So I would really do a good job, as best I could, of articulating what will happen if they stay on the path. But ultimately, they're an adult, probably, and they need to make their own decision about how much worse they're going to get. There's a really good scene in The Guardian with Ashton Kutcher and Kevin Costner. And Ashton Kutcher is kind of being mentored by Kevin Costner, and he says, how do you know who to save? And Kevin Costner says, you go to the first one and you save them, and you go back for the second, and you swim as hard as you can and do as much as you can, and the sea claims the rest. That's hard to do. But I don't get to decide. Kip, if you're going down a path with alcohol abuse, drug abuse, maybe stepping out on your wife, none of which are true, I don't think. But I just want to throw that out there. I need to make sure I say that. I'm gonna call you up. I'm gonna call you out. I'm gonna talk with you. I'm gonna ask you about it. I'm gonna challenge you. I'm gonna get in your face. I'm gonna be a little confrontational, even at the risk of losing the relationship. And then I'm gonna let the chips fall where they may. Yeah. I cannot be vested in the decisions you're making. Yeah. I want you to be successful. I want you to have a thriving marriage. I want you to have a thriving life. But they're not my decisions to make. All I can do is swim as hard as I can for as long as I can and let you decide what you're gonna do with your life.
Yeah. This reminds me of a conversation I had with an employee last week. Just kind of wavering, not all in, kind of up and down in regards to maybe performance and how he's showing up. Grabbed lunch and said, dude, what's going on? Are you all in? Are you loving things? Are you excited? No. Dude, okay, let's figure out why. And whatever you do, whether it's here or somewhere else or whatever, let's address it. Don't let it go unaddressed. You're not loving it. You're upset about something, whatever. let's address it so you can show up powerfully and love whatever it is that you're doing. And I think that same concept we could apply to many things, you know, and to be frank, like I feel a little bit like a hypocrite even saying it, but even like from a marriage perspective, are you loving it? No, it's tough. Okay, then what pivots do we need to make? Mm-hmm. So we're not just compliant with it, because that's not a powerful way of showing up. And I bring that example up because why? Because I think James's question kind of alludes, you know, life has to fall apart. And I love that what you said. The bottom is whenever we stop digging. So we may not think we're digging a hole if we're compliant. You are. And you don't have to be. You can show up powerfully. So whatever it is, whether it's marriage, work, even friendships, are you compliant in your friendships? Am I a mediocre friend to you? Or am I a powerful friend that's present and like contributes to our friendship? If I'm not, then shit, you know what? Get off the pot and show up powerfully, whatever that is. And literally, as I say this, I'm thinking of all the areas of my life that I'm compliant. And it's not a powerful way of showing up. Even if it's just going to the gym, oh, I got my reps. It's like, no, get a fucking good workout in. If you're going to do Easter, awesome. If you're going to have a great conversation or a great relationship with a friend, do it amazingly. We need to stop being compliant. I think a lot of our holes that we're digging are in this space of good enough. And that's just not a powerful way to show up in the world. All right, I got stuff to do. I got stuff to do. Running my mouth.
All do. I mean, we're all a bit hypocritical at times, right? I mean, isn't this the power of this for us?
Yeah.
It's a good reminder of what we need to do better in our lives.
Yeah.
You know, there's something interesting I was thinking about when we're talking about a hole and a guy who's falling down a hole. You know, it's not really the fall that scares people. It's the sudden stop at the bottom. Right? If you're gonna go jump off a 40-foot diving board, you're not scared of the fall. You're scared of how you'll land in the water.
Yeah.
The fall isn't the painful part. It's rock bottom. That's the painful part. That's where you die or get injured. Yeah. So when you're making bad choices, you're falling. But you don't realize those because it doesn't seem significant. For example, when I was drinking heavy, I was impatient and I was irritable and I was not pleasant to be around. I didn't even acknowledge that. I didn't recognize that. But you know when I did? When she said she wanted a divorce. That's when I hit the bottom. But I was falling the entire time, but I didn't register it as painful because I didn't see the bottom. So we have to be aware of that. Even though we might not be experiencing the pain of the decisions that we're making the sudden stop at the end a whole lot worse. And by the way, the opposite is also true. When you're going to the gym every day and your diet is on lock and you're getting up and you're meditating and you're journaling and you're doing all the things that you should be doing, you probably won't see results right away. No. But that doesn't mean you're not getting to the top. You will get to the top and see the view, but you don't get to enjoy it till you're there. And it's all that work that doesn't really feel like it's moving the needle that counts in both directions, up and down.
Totally. Yeah, that's a good distinction. John McDormand, what is the hardest quadrant to remain consistent in for you on the battle plan? What tactics can we deploy to shift out of that limiting mindset?
Yeah, so the tactics are, just to clarify for guys who may not, or the quadrants. I said tactics, didn't I?
Yeah.
Quadrants. The quadrants are 4 areas of life that we focus on. So calibration, connection, condition, contribution. So calibration is mental, emotional, and spiritual health. Connection is the relationships you have with people around you, personal and professional. Condition is your physical health. And then calibration is becoming a man of value, adding value, money, finances, developing valuable services, that sort of thing. For me, the hardest one is calibration. It's the first one. Because I realize when connections and relationships are good and bad, and I can change, I can do different things.
You can see.
I realize when I'm not, with my condition and physical health, like I can jump on the scale. Yeah, you're a little heavier than you ought to be. With giving back, contribution, being a man of value, I can look at bank accounts, for example, or the type of value I'm adding into the world. It's all very tangible. But calibration's not. Physical or mental, emotional, and spiritual health. I can't tell you how often I've caught myself saying, oh, I don't need to do that. Meditate? I'm going to meditate. I don't have time to meditate. Journal? Think about my feelings? I don't have time for that bullshit. I got things to do today. Yeah. But what's interesting and deliberate is that's the first quadrant. Getting mentally, emotionally, and spiritually fit and sound. And if you do that, and by the way, it's not sequential, it's cyclical. So if you start getting that stuff right, everything else becomes better. If you do more conditioning to get your physical health in a better position, then the mental and emotional side is going to spill over as well. So you can start anywhere, but for me, it's always been calibration. And what can we do about it? Force myself to do it. Force myself to write things down. Force myself for a little margin to do after action reviews. Force myself to be considerate of how I'm viewing the world and how other people view me. Force myself to pray. That's one that is a challenge for me. I have to force myself to do those because I recognize how important they are in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. Pramit Ball has a great question. He has a lot.
Let's take one more,
one or two more,
maybe two if it depends on the time. But let's take one or two more.
We'll rapid fire this one. So Pramit, he says, while I understand confidence comes from competence, what are some strategies on being calm when doing something new? There you go. We'll just go with that. So he's doing something new. Yep.
The answer is grace. You're doing it. You're new. Like I was cooking those pizzas. I was frustrated, but I could have grabbed it and like thrown it at one of my kids or something in frustration. I don't know, but I didn't. And I kind of laughed at it. I actually took a picture and I sent it to my girlfriend. I'm like, well, here's my first attempt in making pizza. This looks disgusting. I think I'm doing something wrong because it's funny.
Yeah.
Because I don't take myself so seriously. I used to.
Yeah.
It's just grace. That's all it is. And that helps you be calm and laugh about it. You should laugh at yourself. You made a pizza that looks horrible. Like just laugh and then make another one. Or a presentation, maybe it's your first presentation you ever gave and you stumbled all over your words and you pits going on and it was just like horrible. Laugh at it. It's like, yeah, that sucked. That was miserable, but just laugh and know that you're just doing it. The other thing is if you're worried about how other people will perceive you, and most of us are, then just own it. It's better just to own it. So if you're going to go present in public and you're really worried about how others will perceive you, then say that in your presentation.
Yeah.
Hey guys, look, I'm not a public speaker. I want to be, but this is my first go. So if I stumble over my words or there's a little shakiness in my voice or it looks like I have shower heads under my armpits because I'm sweating, that's what it is. I'm just super nervous, but thank you for listening anyways. And thank you for not throwing tomatoes at me while I talk to you. You just own it. Because everybody else feels the same way. And they're like, yep, been there. Definitely been there. So just laugh at yourself, give yourself some grace, and explain or own the fact that you're nervous or not comfortable or feeling inadequate or whatever you might be experiencing.
Yeah. I feel for me, this is letting go of the expectation that I should be good at something and getting present to the idea that everything just takes reps. And when you do that, you can have fun. Like you could really have fun because there's no expectation. You suck. Awesome. Now just sit with it and enjoy the moment and let go of the expectations of the way you should or should not be. And just be present with that. It can be, in fact, it sounds rejuvenating and exciting to be just green. Sounds fun.
It's freeing.
Yeah.
I mean, this one area that I see this a lot in, Kip, is jujitsu.
Totally.
Like how many times have we answered the question, hey, I'm going to my first jujitsu class tonight. Well, what should I expect? Nothing.
Nothing. Just
you don't
show
need
up.
any tips from me or anybody else. You have your gi or whatever, you know the address, you've already paid for a membership, it sounds like, or you're going for that's all you, and then just listen. It's all you need to do. And then when somebody strangles you with their toes or whatever, then just laugh at it because it's funny. How can somebody be, I remember the first time I went and trained, there was this 140-pound maybe kid, and Ace was like, hey, we did some instruction. He's like, hey, you're going to roll with this guy. I'm like, okay, what is roll? What does that mean? And he's like, you're going to like fight with him. I'm like, okay, what do I do? And he's like, just try not to get submitted. I'm like, what is it? What's submitted? What does that mean? And he's like, where it like hurts and you need to tell him to stop. I'm like, okay, this guy, this 140-pound guy, I'm 200 pounds. I pride myself on being fairly athletic. I'm like, okay, sounds good. I'll try not to get submitted. And within 30 seconds, this kid had his scrawny little legs wrapped around my neck and arm, choking the life out of me. It's hilarious.
It is.
How does this guy, who I've got 60 pounds on, wrap his toothpick legs around my neck to the point where I'm losing blood supply to my brain? That's funny. And I had to figure out what it was. But again, it's just let go of the expectations. It's hilarious that kid could do that to me. I've rolled with women who I'm like, this woman. And the minute I start rolling, I'm like, oh shit, I got to step this up.
She's going to kill me.
She's going to kill me if I don't, because I'd go in there easy. No expectations. Just enjoy it. It's all funny.
Yeah, totally. All right, last question. Derek Gordon. He has a long question here, but I'm going to just jump to the meat of it here. What are some practical ideas or resources to move past the fear of losing security and becoming more of a sovereign man? He feels like he can't step into being more sovereign because he has the security, this comfort of his current job and profession. So what are some tactics and ideas to let go of perceived security and be more sovereign?
I think the answer is you hedge. This is not a real common answer in forums like this, because a lot of self-help guys are like, just burn the boats, burn the bridges. Like
nothing else. Yeah.
Yeah. Make a leap of faith. You could. That's not what I've done. That's not what I see other people doing that actually do it right. But I think you could hedge. So what does hedging look like when it comes to your occupation? Well, get your debt paid off. Now, today. If you don't have $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 worth of extra debt payments going out every month, don't you think it'd be easier to make a transition into something you love? Another thing that you could do is you could set aside $100 or $1,000 a month or whatever you can do and build up 10, 20, 40, 50, $100,000 in the bank account. Don't you think if you had $100,000 in the bank account, you'd feel a little safer going to another job or profession? Another thing that you could do is you could start learning everything you need to learn about the business you might be going into now while somebody else is paying you to do it. Case in point, when I was in my financial planning practice, I worked for a firm and I knew I was going to go out on my own. And while I continued to work for that firm, I did a lot of research on business building, marketing, tax strategy and planning. And so when I left, I already knew that stuff. Now I hadn't put it into practice, but I was well ahead of the curve beyond most entrepreneurs because they start thinking about that when they start their business. Yeah. I didn't do that. I did it ahead of time. And I looked at it as somebody else training and paying me to start my business. What a really cool thing. Another thing you can do is always build your network. Always be building your network. The more people you know, the more opportunities are going to be presented to you. And I'll give you an example of this. If for some reason Order of Man went under, or I decided today, I'm like, I'm done, cancel, stop, done with it. Within 24 hours, I'd have 6 to 10 great job opportunities lined up. Not because I'm wonderful, just because I know people.
Yep.
Because I spent the last decade of my life getting to know powerful, influential people. And the natural, inevitable outcome of that is opportunities that wouldn't be afforded to me if I didn't. So there's 4 tactics that I would consider. Pay off debt, build savings, start learning what you need to learn now before you make transitions, and always build your network.
Yeah. I'll add one thing to this because, in fact, I was following someone on the gram, and they were talking about, to feel empowered, you have to be an entrepreneur. You have to be a business owner and to sell their course, right? And I disagree. And I disagree because, and it could be the truth for some people, but I think the biggest mistake that we sometimes have is we go, well, I can't show up and be sovereign while working for someone. No, you can. And this is why the messaging of Andy Frisella is so strong, you know, this concept of MFCEO, right? Is why? Because you're that, whether you work for someone or not. Like,
of course,
be strong in the position that you're in and thrive in it, and don't be a victim of anybody, and own it. And it's a contract that you have with an employer. If they don't pull their weight, you're out. Like, see it as that, not as like some cog or employee that's stuck in their system. Show up powerfully, even in the position that you're in. So then that way, to your point, Ryan, you're gaining the experience, the knowledge, and the opportunities. So you're making your calls whenever you want, whether you're working for yourself or whether you're working for someone else. That's how we should be showing up in the world, period. Not just if we're business owners. That's how every employee should be showing up, to show up powerfully.
Yeah, I think, man, well said. I think the thing that really shifted for me as I've heard this concept is, if you are an employee, then your employer is your client.
Totally.
If you're an entrepreneur, the client is the client. If you're an employee, then your employer is the client. Meaning they're hiring you. If you're, let's say it's your first job, you're gonna go flip burgers at Burger King like I did for my first job. The people that coming to buy food, they weren't my clients. They were the business's clients. My client was my boss who hired me. And she hired me to do a very, very good job in a very specific thing. That was to take the burger and put it on the patty and put the mayonnaise and the ketchup and the mustard and the pickles on, wrap it up and get it out. And it was my job as them being my client to do a phenomenal job on that. And at any point I could decide, I no longer want you to be my client. I'm going to go to McDonald's because they're a better client than you are. Or at any time, the client could fire me and say, you're not doing a good enough job. We're going to go find somebody else who's going to do a better job at this.
Absolutely.
That's how I've chosen to look at it. And I think it's a huge mindset shift.
Totally. And it goes both ways, even from a negative perspective. I've had this conversation literally with my team of, our job is to move the needle in these particular areas. If we're not, we shouldn't be here. Mm-hmm. Like, my recommendation to my client should be, you're paying too much for me not to do anything that's moving the proper needles. Thus, I'm not justified in this role, and neither is my team. So if someone hasn't made that clear to me, guess what? I'm coming back to the table and going, hey, I have another way for us to provide value to you, client. And this is what I recommend. So then that way your investment in me and my time drives the company forward. So you got to, like, I love that analogy of seeing your employer as your client, because that's how you ensure you keep your job. That's how you ensure that you're providing massive value, and that you're truly owning the relationship and the value add, and not just, well, I'll just sit over here and I'll stay employed and, you know, hopefully I don't get fired, or hopefully I'm providing value. I'm not really sure. If you don't know if you're providing value or not, figure it out and come to the table with suggestions of how you provide value. Own that relationship. Don't be passive to it.
Right. Yep.
Such a great analogy.
Well, good questions today, guys. Kip, do you mind if I close us out today? I've got a couple of announcements I wanted to share.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, cool. The first one, and I may have mentioned this briefly, we've got a bunch of new merchandise at our store. We've got refills on all of our shirts. We've got 3 new shirt designs that are available. Cool. So if you want to support what we're doing here and have some cool shirts in the process and look good, hats, battle planners, other stuff, head to store.orderaman.com. And then the second announcement I wanted to make is, I've been very quiet on this, but I helped found a new company called M42 Adventures. Cool. And it's our job and our goal to introduce the world to the outdoors through different experiences that we have. So it's outdoor experiences, whether it's hunts or ATV experiences or fly fishing, survival schools, culinary and butchering classes, whatever we can do to get people familiar with the outdoors. Sometimes, a lot of times, and I've noticed this to be true for men who have asked this question, which is quite a few, it's confusing and frustrating, and you don't really know where to start if you want to get immersed into the world of hunting or survival or whatever it might be. So M42 Adventures, in July and August, we have a couple of hunts to Africa that I'm very excited about. One we're going to go hunt, but we're also going to go to an orphanage and give back to that community. We're going to do a safari while we're there, and then we also have a helicopter tour that we get to go on. And this is for hunters, and if you want to do non-hunting, there's options available as well. So there's some really, really cool things I'm excited about with M42 Adventures, and this is partly a response to how many guys ask me about how do I get into hunting? How do I get doing that? Like, where's the best place to go? We help facilitate all of that so you can immerse yourself into the world without having all the confusion and chaos about doing it yourself. So check it out, M42 Adventures, the number 42, M42 Adventures. That's all I've got.
And that's M42adventures.com is the URL.
.com.
Okay.
Correct. Yep.
Excellent.
Yep.
That sounds perfect,
Cool.
man. Well, and on a side note, I need to talk to you about Hawaii because that's how I feel. I feel like, I don't know what's going gear, you know what I mean, or whatever. So
I know I haven't said anything
because
because I didn't know if I was supposed to say anything about it.
Yeah.
So
Asia dropped the ball, or she told me last week, I'll be honest, full disclosure. I was like, what? No, bad idea. I'm like, cancel, refund immediately. And she's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, babe, I don't own a bow. I don't have gear to practice. It's going to be a complete waste of time other than being in Hawaii. But I want to show up. I don't want to show up with a stick, throwing little sticks at a deer.
You might have as much success as I do out there. So I don't know.
So anyhow, we'll talk soon.
We'll talk about it.
Cool.
All right, guys. Appreciate everybody. Great questions. As always, hope we gave you some answers. Kip, you had some real knowledge today. You dropped some bombs on us, man. There was some cool moments in there. So I appreciate all that you do. All right, guys. We'll be back on Friday. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.